In this Film Ireland podcast, Lynn Larkin chats with Tony Kelly about his debut comic feature, The Hurler, A Champion's Tale, which is in cinemas from the 6th of October.
So, Tony Kelly, thanks a million for taking the time to come in and chat to us at Film Ireland.
It's my pleasure, Lynn. I'm delighted to be here, and even more delighted to be here with yourself.
Oh, you're so good. Thanks a million. Well, huge congratulations is in order because the movie, The Hurler, it's made. And I know it's been a huge labour of love because you've been talking about this for a long time, but here it is, it's made and it's out.
Yes, October the 6th. That's right.
Could you just tell us a little bit about the film?
Sure. So the film is called The Hurler with the subheading of A Campion's Tale because the character that I play is called Campion. So basically Gar is a bit of an enigma. He is a very good hurler, coming maybe towards the twilight of his career, but he's also fancies himself as a little bit of a David Beckham style character. As he describes himself as a man about town. He's dating the biggest influencer in Ireland and all that kind of stuff. So he juggles his on-field career with his off-the-field antics. And basically the story of the film is Gar becomes the first hurler in the history of the proud amateur game of hurling to fail a drug test for performance-enhancing drugs.
Oh yeah, very first.
Yes, yeah, and obviously, you know, that doesn't go on in the amateur world of hurling and the GAA. So he ends up blackballing himself, and in order to try and save his reputation, he agrees to travel to Waterford to coach Ireland's worst hurling team, essentially.
Right, okay. And I remember actually back in, was it 2015 or 2016, Tony, that you had just come off the back of a TV series also called The Hurler, right? Is this the inspiration kind of bouncing off this that you were decided then I actually want to make it a movie? This is what we've been talking about for a while. So could you just tell the listeners a little bit about that process, initially the TV series and how you came up with the idea, and then what made you kind of think actually this could be a movie?
Yeah, so it was a web series originally, and that's when we actually met. It was originally 2015. And then the next year again at 2016, after I'd made another version of it, basically. It was a web series originally in 2013, just basically living on YouTube. And it was just a straight narrative, 10 to 15 minute episodes. I think there was 5 originally. In 2013, and then it started kind of gaining a life outside of just the people who were watching it on YouTube. In 2015, when it started, I discovered that web series had festivals like film festivals do. And I ended up winning an award at the biggest one, which is LA Web Fest, which used to take place in Universal Studios in Hollywood. And then from there, I was supposed to make a second season of this web series. It also called The Hurler and also featuring Gar, but it was living in a different world than the film lives in. And I guess that second season was only one episode, actually. It was in New York. It was based. I actually had a bit of a budget to make that one, whereas the previous one I literally made with a DV camera and one lav mic. And then, the second one then was when stuff started kind of happening for me then. When you were talking about, we met at, I think it was Dublin Web Fest in 2016. And obviously the Hurler that year, the one in New York, kind of it got a lot of plaudits and it led to a lot of cool stuff for me personally. And basically I was trying to make it a fully fledged TV series, Lynn. That was my goal was to get it. But I didn't really realize the amount of hoops and red tape you have to go through to get on TV. Like, I thought it was just someone would see it, they'd like it, they'd give you a TV show and you'd have a TV show, but it's absolutely not the case.
Wouldn't that have been nice? I think you are just speaking the language of many a filmmaker and creative, though, you know, because at least at the very start, you went out there and you made it happen for yourself, which is quite inspirational. I think people kind of need to know that, because sometimes when they see a movie just being made, they don't know that actually it's been a very long process, and the creative process that kind of gets to this point. So I thought that was important that you'd kind of mention that. And
it's been over 10 years. It's been over 10 years, you know. But just to finish the story then, what happened was then I ended up doing the movie with yourself, Writing Home, in 2017, and just seeing how a lower budget independent feature film was made, I kind of went, oh, maybe I could do the Hurler like this. Everyone is working together. It's very positive, and it's being done, you know, and it's not necessarily being financed by, you know, the people who you think you need to be financed by. And then I kind of went off and wrote the script from there. Basically, that's how it happened.
And that's how it happened. That's great stuff. And you actually ended up, you wrote, produced, directed, and starred in the movie. Now, any one of those roles can be extremely challenging and stressful in their own right. So what was that process like? How did you find it, honestly? Because
I'll just open by saying I will never do it again. That would be the first thing I would say.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was happening, you know, when it was becoming clear that it would finally be happening at the end of 2021, my agent called me and just went, you cannot do this. This is not something you can do. And I just didn't believe her. I just didn't want to listen, because I'd been told yes and then no for so long that if I felt like if I didn't do it all myself to a point, that it would never happen. So I just did it because it had to be done. But Lynn, like, being honest with you, like, it was the hardest thing I'll probably ever do in my life. You know, by the second week of filming, I was completely at zero energy. I was being propped up by vitamins and different vitamin drinks and stuff like that, and doctors, because I physically had no energy to play the role or direct it or anything at that point.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And that's why I really wanted to ask that, because, like, even one of those roles can be enough to push anybody over the edge when they're in the middle of a movie, because, you know yourself, not everything goes according to plan. And so I was like, how did you manage that? So when it came
having a good crew is essential for that. That, you know, without and we had a small crew, but I wanted to keep it that way. You know, I wanted to keep it to people I knew, people I trusted, people that I knew that if I started to panic or if stuff started to hit the fan for me, that I knew those people would be there for me, you know?
Yeah. And when your agent was saying to you, don't do it, what was it that she didn't want you to do? She didn't want you to, direct it as well as
No. As a matter of fact, she was the one who convinced me to direct it.
Right.
She just said, like, you've written it, you're directing it, and you're in it. You cannot produce it as well. It was really to try and bring on more of a producer to do, you know, to do the producing stuff. But at that point, Lynn, like, look, listen, you know how long this is going on for me, you know, and like I just said, if I hand this over to someone else, that might be another 6 months, and then that might not work out. It was happening. I knew that the finance was coming in, and it had to be now or never. So I just had to put on the big boy pants and do it.
And just do it. And we'll get to the finance and things, because I do want to ask you a little bit about that. But just just on the day-to-day then, like, because you had so many roles, so like on camera shots, you know, you're pretty much on screen for, I think, all of it, right? Maybe with the exception of a few like aerial shots and things like that. How did you find directing those scenes, or who did you lean on in particular? Where, like, did you have a really good DOP, or like who was there catching things for you?
Yeah, so basically we had I had a great first AD called Shane Mulrennan, and Shane was tasked basically with watching my performance. I basically would tell everyone at the start of the day or the start of a scene what I wanted and the setups that we were going to do, and then obviously jump into the scene with the actors. And then from there, I would watch playback when I felt like, you know, I would watch the playback, but I needed, even just as they were happening.
Okay.
Like, just watch. I had a monitor, like a mobile monitor that we had, and I would ask for playback and rewatch the take.
Right.
But that wasn't possible every single time. Obviously, that would have taken forever. So I had Shane to watch my performance, because I needed someone who wasn't going to say, oh, you're brilliant in every single take, because that's not possible. And then also I had a brilliant DOP in Louis Buggy, who I'd worked with previously on another feature called The Tale of Billy O.C., who I trusted hugely as well. So there was a number of people there who were able to assist when I was trying to just focus purely on acting. But a lot of it was, before we would roll, I would say what I wanted and try and direct the crew and the cast. But it was a very, very difficult task.
Yeah, I I can just imagine how hard that was. Like, I remember listening to an interview actually with Al Pacino, and he had said, like, he directed, he didn't even, like, he wasn't doing as many roles as you in this, but he had directed and he'd starred in, I'm not sure if it must have been like Chinese Coffee or the Oscar Wilde movie. I can't remember the name of it, but he had said that he found that really hard because there were moments, he said, when he felt the camera should be on him and it wasn't, and he felt embarrassed about saying it's my scene, put the camera on me, you should be catching my reaction. Did you have any of those moments of
that definitely happened, but more in the edit.
Right.
And that definitely was, I can completely identify with that, especially in the edit, because what would happen was Louis also edited as well as shot it. So Louis would compile a scene and send it to me, or we'd be in the room together. And I'd be like, no, oh God, this is actually supposed to be my scene, you know? And it's difficult because it does initially feel like you're just asking to be shown more.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And that's obviously not the case. You're trying to make the best film possible and tell the best story possible.
Yeah.
But, you know, but yeah, I definitely found that in the edit more so than, because look, listen, we did shoot a lot of coverage. And that was obviously a choice purely in case I did miss something, we'd have everything. You know,
and
that
directing the other actors and all, that was all okay for you? You didn't have any?
No, I didn't have any problem with that. That wasn't a problem. And what I did really relish was when I could step out of a scene, like even if it wasn't, like if it was coverage on, like for example, there's a big sequence in it where we're all at a house party. And although I'm in the room, no one is conversing with me per se, and they're all talking to each other over the other side of the room. Like I relished being able to step off set and be outside the room on the monitor, directing from outside the room and watching, and like that stuff was, I just loved that. And also when we were shooting some pickups that didn't involve Gar in any way, like we did a whole day with Jon Kenny doing stuff with just Jon, and that was just incredible. That was just incredible, getting to be behind the camera and Jon in front of it. It was just a dream come true.
Yeah, and a master's class as well, really. It's great to have people like that on board. And again, I will get to that as well.
Okay.
So, but a big question also to do with production. So you hit on it slightly. You were saying about funding. So when I had a gander, it didn't seem like as though you went down the usual funding routes. Doesn't look like as though you looked for Film Ireland or not Film Ireland, Screen Ireland, sorry. And
I did.
You did you?
Yeah, it was rejected.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So you went for development or for production?
I originally went for screenplay development. I did have I would say a very big production company behind me, because that was one of the things like that happened. They had seen the web series and were kind of all in on Gar and the idea and all that. And I thought, again, this is another misconception. You know, I thought, okay, now this big hitter production company has come in and has my idea, and we're applying to Screen Ireland for the money, and I will get it because they are huge and they make loads and loads of things. And then it didn't happen. You know, I was longlisted, I think, for funding. It's a good few years ago now, Lynn. It is around 2017. But it ultimately the funding wasn't. But look, listen, they can only finance so many projects. I get that as well, you know.
True, yeah. So then where did the money come from?
So I basically petitioned a few businessmen that I knew.
Right.
I was lucky enough to have some. I'm not going to name their names.
No,
because
you don't have to.
I don't think it's good taste. But I had done some. You know, I'd been a stand-up before as well, and I'd done a charity show in Waterford at the Theatre Royal to raise money for a really good cause. And there was some guys in attendance that night who saw my stand-up, and then I think subsequently became fans of my work and started following me and different things I was doing. And then they happened to come and see the one-man show version of the Hurler that I was doing right before COVID. And there was some remarks passed, you know, if there's ever anything we can do or I can do, or, you know, we would love to be able to support. So during COVID, I don't know if you remember, Lynn, because you would have been in on the first draft of this script when it was originally happening. It was originally taking place between Ireland and New York. But during COVID, I felt anyway, I don't know about anyone else, I don't know if I was ever going to see America ever again. So let alone shoot a movie there with a full crew. So I basically after the third lockdown, I think it was, I just rewrote the whole script to take place in Ireland rather than New York. And I'm from Waterford very proudly, as everyone knows. And I just said, we could shoot a movie in Waterford. Why not? And I think, the guys, the businessmen who came on board are very big ambassadors for Waterford and growing Waterford as a place to film and a place to do business. So it really made sense all around to do it.
Okay, perfect. So you went down the private route, which is good for people to know, like, that there's other options and that you can get stuff made even without like big funders behind you.
Yeah, there was a bit of business stuff that needed to happen. Look, I come from I sold cars to go to film school. So like I'm able to hustle, I hustled my way into film school. I'm after hustling my way into making this movie as well. Yeah. But I have some friends who are business minded and involved in startups and stuff like that. So they were able to break down financials for investors for me. So I was lucky in that respect.
In that regard. Yeah. And are you comfortable with like saying like ballpark number of like how much the project overall cost you? Because it looks like as though you got a relatively really good production quality for an independent film. So
look, that's kind of complicated as well because the money spent doesn't reflect the work done.
Of course.
My producer in the States, Ryan Duffy, who's one of my best friends, we're friends, a decade or more from New York when I lived there. Ryan was working for Panavision at the time in the States. And they were Light Iron is the name of the company. Ryan has subsequently moved companies, but still Light Iron were who we worked with. And I mean, Light Iron did Succession, and they did. I'm blanking here now in the middle of the interview, but a lot of big HBO stuff, a lot of big movies and TV series. So we had them behind us in doing color grading and all that kind of stuff. So it was always going to look a certain way from the quality
you're pulling
of that.
In favors, really, is
of
what
course,
you were doing. You're pulling in favors.
Like that was never going to happen on the budget that we had. But Ryan made it happen,
And how many days were you filming in Waterford then in total? You were down there for?
Yeah, we did Monday to Saturday for 3 weeks. So what's that? 6 trees, 18 days. And I would say we probably did another 6 days of pickups, maybe 5 days. But so probably a month overall, but that was the initial shoot was a 3-week shoot.
Yeah. And your days, were they kind of like long days or were you kind of watching your time with that, or how did that work?
No, we watched our time. We did watch our time, like, because I also know what it's like to just be an actor coming on and you don't want to be putting in 12-hour days, especially. Look, listen, everyone was obviously paid, but it's, you still want, because obviously it's different. Everything was done within equity rules because I'm a member of equity very proudly. I believe in unions and all that kind of stuff. And my agent Lorraine reps Jerry, who's the chairman of equity as well. So we made sure to run all the contracts and everything by them before we ever went to camera, which I do think is really important, to be honest with you.
It is, because like people giving their time as well, they do need to get paid for what they're doing.
Well,
go on.
Getting paid is like, that's without question. But it's just to kind of like make sure everyone, like, and I think everyone should consult the equity when they're doing anything from behind or in front of the camera, because that's what the union is there for.
Exactly. And they do. They definitely give you a hand out as well. And they point you in the right direction. So speaking of equity members, you had actually some really famous faces pop up. Who knew that Marty Morrissey could act?
I know. It's crazy.
How did you manage to get him on board?
So Marty was the only one that I didn't have really a direct contact to or knew previously. I think I'd met him before through some sort of GAA thing. I'm not sure, even though I'm not involved in the GAA. I know a lot of, I used to know a lot of the inter-county Waterford players. But basically what had happened was myself and Jon Kenny, Jon wanted to rehearse all our scenes like a play. So we would get together once, twice a week in the lead up and run our lines and do. I would give the blocking and Jon would suggest what he thought should happen and give some notes and stuff like that. And we worked together really, really closely on all our scenes together. And then we were just sitting down in my mum and dad's house in Waterford, and he said, I'm just I've been reading the script. I really, really like it. He said, but what's going on with Marty? Is that a placeholder? Because Marty Morrissey was written into the script. Is that a placeholder, or are you getting someone to play Marty? And I went, no, I want Marty to do it. And he said, right, well, have you got him? And I said, no, look, again, my agent is supposed to reach out to his agent or manager or whatever, but we still haven't done it. He said, well, Tony, we're filming in 2 weeks, like.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I know. And he goes, feck this, I'm ringing Marty. And John literally just took out his phone and rang Marty right in front of me.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, and he was like, well, he stepped out, but I could hear him because, you know, he was right outside the window. And he was like, I'm down in Waterford. I'm doing this film with this young fella. He's a great young fella. It's hilarious. And you'd be some fool to miss out. So out of nowhere, then I get this email from Marty Morrissey. Probably later that night, actually, John must have sent him my email address. And he was like, John sent me the script. I'm in. And that was it.
That's so cool. He's exactly how I would imagine him to be as well. So that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we also had you'd Elva Trill as well. I've never met her. Yeah. She did a fantastic job. Where is Elva from?
Elva is originally from Sligo.
Right.
And is based, I think she's kind of considers herself almost half Wexford now. Her mum lives down there. Okay. She's based out of London. Elva is.
Well, she did a brilliant job because the accent was fantastic, you know, and she was nice and natural. It didn't take me out of the movie at all. I fully believed her. Her performance was gorgeous. Obviously, Jon Kenny was fab, and I have to give an honourable mention to Garda Colm Hickey, who was just hilarious. That was Carl Spain. No, obviously there's a whole load of others, but it's well worth going and seeing the cast as well, just if anybody's listening, because there were some lovely performances in there.
It's a true ensemble piece. It really is.
Yeah, there are some lovely performances. And you didn't have a casting director on this, so you kind of knew everybody else pretty much, was it?
Yeah, I basically knew who was going to play everyone nearly from the get-go.
Right.
I had there was a couple of roles who were kind of up in the air, and in fairness, Lorraine Brennan, my agent at LVM, she was wonderful in the casting process, because I would call her or email her and be like, I'm really stuck for this role. Is there someone you suggest? And in fairness to her, agents do get a bad rap sometimes. She never went, well, I have X, Y, and Z on my book. She would always
pick somebody.
She would always make some suggestions or say, I don't know, Right. But a lot of them, I'd worked with a lot of the people before, or people I knew who I had wanted to work with before.
Yeah. Okay. So you knew what their strengths were, and there wasn't an audition process or anything like that. You were you've already seen them in things or worked with them.
Yeah. And that was kind of important to me because of the nature of the story. It being a mockumentary. Which it's been since its inception 10 and a half years ago. I felt like everything really needed to be natural. And I think one of the best ways of doing that without much need for acting exercises and all that stuff is to know each other. So if you're going onto a set and the actors already know each other, the chemistry is you hope is always already there.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And then as for the overall shoot, and you were saying how stressful it was for you to do everything. So did anything funny or anything disastrous happen during the shoot? Yeah, really?
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah, absolutely. So it was going fairly swimmingly. For a good while. We did look, there was some stuff that I probably wouldn't be talking about on a podcast. There was one or two things with people's agents and stuff like that. Right. That is a private conversation, maybe. But yeah, there was a bit of that in one instance, but that we got over that. But funnier stuff it's fairly well reported now, but for anyone who didn't know, I got concussed on the set the day Marty Morrissey was there.
Oh my God. How did that happen?
Well, obviously a man wearing so many hats, it's not great for him to get concussed, but that's what happened. And you would imagine probably, Lynn, you're making a film about hurling and you can see me play hurling in the film and stuff like that, that I probably got hit with a hurley or something. Now, I banged my head off a window.
Out of frustration or by accident?
No. Our sound guy, it was his birthday and we got him a birthday cake, and I kind of felt like, I've brought cakes on the set and made it this party-ish atmosphere, and now everyone is kind of a bit giddy. I need to calm everyone down because we were running a bit behind, and Marty was in that day. Marty was running late, so I was kind of panicking, and we were in a hurling club dressing room, and I ran up the stairs to where the makeup was being done, and I ran in, and it was I actually remember it was the 29th of April. It was some scorcher of a day.
Yeah.
And the skylights were open on the roof of this hurling club. And I just ran in to try and get everyone ready. But I ran right into the window, which was head height for me.
Mm-hmm.
And right in the middle of the top of my head, it just hit me and knocked me out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that wasn't ideal. And luckily it was the second last day. But to get through basically a full shoot day of the second last day and get through the full shoot day the very last day was very tough. It was very tough being concussed.
Yeah. So that would that have been your toughest day, do you think, out of everything? That was the toughest bit of filmmaking?
No, not necessarily, because it was almost like I was on something almost because I was so out of it.
Right.
So I was flighty. The lads might have been stressed, the crew. But I was flighty. I was going around thinking, I thought Carl Spain was supposed to be there on the last day. I was like, where's Carl Spain? And they were like, Carl's not until 4 p.m. It's 11. I was like, oh, okay. And all that kind of stuff was going on. But there was, like, I'm thinking now, and I don't, like, there was nothing, as far as I know. I remember we shot out in Tramore, out in the amusement park out in Tramore.
Yeah.
Which was really fun. And I remember we didn't have permission, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of a little bit stressed. We had a lot of extras that day because we had guys turn up to pretend to be part of this team that Gara coaches. Like, there was 4 core main characters, and then we would have extras be the other guys. So we had the whole hurling team, quote unquote, and crew and myself doing a big kind of a celebratory scene out in Tramore amusement park on the amusements and the hurdy-gurdies.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Shane, who was the first AD, I remember saying to him, don't ask anyone for permission. I will ask for forgiveness later. Everyone in Waterford knows we're shooting this movie.
Oh
so don't worry about it. And then Louis, the DOP, he said, like, well, you know, I have this big camera. And I went, well, hide it as best you can. And I turned around and Shane had ran over to the park security and been like, can we please shoot here? And I was like, I literally just told you not to do that. But what was amazing was the park manager came over and he was like, hi Tony, how are you? I've been following all the stuff on social media. Do you want to film here today? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, look, I'll bring you on all the rides you want to come on. You don't have to pay for any of them, and you can have as much as you want. And it was just unbelievable. So
that was a stroke of luck, wasn't it? That really was.
The whole shoot, that's why I'm telling you that story. The whole shoot felt like that because we were shooting here in Waterford. It was a real community effort. Everyone wanted the film to be made here, and we're just delighted that it was happening and just wanted to help. So we had that at every turn. So it was kind of having that community spirit.
Helped huge.
Yeah, and blocked off all the real disastrous things from happening, you know?
Well, fair play. So it was clever to go down to Waterford. So what is next for you then? Because you're nearly like you're in the middle of this now. Promotion is happening. Yeah. It's out pretty much next week. So what projects have you got in the pipeline after this?
Yeah, I have a few things that I want to do next. But again, it has to be, is it possible to do it, you know?
Yeah.
That's the thing about being an Irish filmmaker, I think, and being still based in Ireland, is it's all very regimented and slow. And listen, we're a small country of like 4 million people. It has to be that way. And it's different, I suppose, than being in the States and you might have a movie and then you're able to kind of decide because there's so many options. But in fairness, I do have a couple of irons in the fire of what's coming next. But I've said this already, that I don't think Gar's story is over yet. You know, I think there's more in Gar. I do.
So maybe
the
Hurler Part 2.
Maybe, yeah, I do think that. But I have another feature that I'm hopefully going to be doing next after this. So please God, that'll
be your next one. Well, Tony, thanks so much for chatting to us. I honestly, well done. I absolutely am delighted for you. There's not many people that actually have an idea and then go out there and make it happen. And it's great to hear that you're one of them and you've managed to do it. So where can people check out the Hurler?
So it's in Irish cinemas from October the 6th.
Great stuff. Okay, well, I wish you all the success. Thanks a million for coming and chatting to us. And thank you to all our listeners at Film Ireland Podcast. And we'll check you out next time. See you soon. Bye.